Just a second.
Hey, what's up, Internet? I'm Dan Casey. Welcome back to Nerdist. Folks, we're very excited today because now that The Lord of the Rings of Power's first season has come to an end, we're fiending to venture back to Middle-earth, much like Samwise Gamgee is for potatoes. Well, fortunately, today the folks at Prime Video released a metric ton of awesome new behind-the-scenes X-ray content that takes you inside the making of the Rings of Power to show you exactly how they brought this epic story to life. But this isn't something I can just talk about alone. I mean, I could, but that would be pretty sad. So instead, I have a special guest joining me today. You may know him from the Rings of Power as the High King of the Noldor, Gil-Galad. Please welcome Benjamin Walker.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Of course, always happy to welcome royalty into our virtual studio. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
I'm super stoked about this. I really loved this series. I loved seeing, and especially behind the scenes of how it all came together. I love especially any sort of, practical effects, all the physical production that went into this. And I want to get into that. But first, I want to talk a bit about Tolkien fandom, specifically your Tolkien fandom. Now, I remember reading that your older brother was the one who first introduced you to Lord of the Rings. But I'm curious, what is your earliest memory of first venturing into Tolkien's world?
Growing up, my father had a movie rental store, like before, Blockbuster, I'm really dating myself here, but it was kind of a small town mom and pop movie rental store, and they rented the animated films. And I remember watching the kind of choppy animation of Bilbo Baggins with his walking stick and just kind of going, what is this world? I want to live in it. And that's my earliest memory if I close my eyes and really think back. And, all those old animated films that you see probably before you're old enough to really understand them, like Wind in the Willows, things that if you encounter again when you're older, you go, oh, I thought I dreamed that. So it kind of existed between your really coherent brain kind of coming online. And then my brother, you're right, he was an avid reader, and I always wanted to be as smart and as well read as he was. And the first kind of big boy book he ever gave me was The Hobbit, and then he kind of introduced me to the whole legendarium.
That's amazing. I definitely feel you on that childhood liminal space of wondering if, hey, did this really happen? Did I imagine this? But thankfully, the Rankin and Bass movie it does exist. Everyone can go check it out as well. Nice counterpiece, counter programming to Rings of Power as well. And also the Hobbit was my first big boy book. That and sort of it was like the Redwall to Middle Earth pipeline.
Redwall. Why haven't they made that movie?
I don't know. They need to get trained animals first, and it takes a while to get the mice to learn all of those techniques.
I don't know. I mean, but come on, if they can make cats, they can make Redwall.
That's true, but I don't know if I want the same team that made Cats making Redwall. But now that I say that out loud, maybe I do. Well. Maybe I do. But back to the fantasy world at hand. Thinking about those sort of childhood memories and that sort of early exposure to Tolkien. How did those memories compare to when you stepped onto the sets for the first time for Rings of Power?
I mean, it's ongoing, frankly. The number. Almost every day, even now, we're well into filming the second season, and I still have moments where I just have to pinch myself, and because it is I feel so fortunate to have a job like this, and to be part of Tolkien's legacy, even in some small way. And also to be part of a discussion. What I really loved is that people are discussing the show, and they have theories, and they're invested in certain worlds, and because particularly the people that are really familiar with the source material, they're seeing where and why we veer, and it feels like you're part of a living, breathing organism, and to be part of that conversation is one of the greatest joys of it. But in terms of walking on set every day, every morning, I just, a lot of people when they're in the makeup chair or the prosthetics chair, they kind of watch the mirror and see what they're doing, and I can't. I look down the whole time. I look at myself when I get in the chair, and then 45 minutes later, I look back up, and I'm there. I'm somebody else, and that to me is profound because I like Middle Earth, and it's an honor to go there for work.
Yeah, I have to imagine definitely a much cooler workplace than many of us are stepping into each day. But also that transformation because, you sort of sit down in the chair and then, that time passes and then you truly do transform into Gil-Galad. Um, and I, sort of, you've talked about the work of costume designer Kate Hawley and her team, and that sort of expert craftsmanship they put into his costume. What was it like when you first put on that costume? What about that particular ensemble do you enjoy so much?
Well, I find the greatest joys about being an actor is that on some level you are a canvas for other artists, whether it's the prosthetics department, um, the people that create your wig, and Kate Howley was no exception. And she was also a true collaborator in that she would ask you a question not because she knew where she was going. She had a clear vision for the world of wardrobe for each character, and particularly each separate race. But there was one day I know I've spoken about the rings that I wear, but they began with these very kind of ornate, like something the Pope would wear. And I just thought, I don't know. I feel like we're leaning too far into opulence and forgetting a lot of the struggle and violence that has also shaped Gil-Galad and is therefore shaping how he leads and his legacy. And that kind of collaboration is rare. Oftentimes, you find that when you're working with another department, they kind of go, "Oh, shut up, actor. Wear what I made for you. It's taking me months to make it." She didn't do that. She went, "Oh," took the idea, ran with it, created this series of rings that were her opulent idea. But then, when you make a fist look like brass knuckles, it really felt like real collaboration. To where, I mean, for all I know, she was leading me down that path, and I merely said what she had coaxed me into saying. But certainly with the wardrobe she created, it's another thing where when you look away from the mirror, when you look back, um, so much of your job has been solidified for you. A lot of that wardrobe, I think if anyone put it on, you'd feel like the king of a fantastical species.
Yeah, I mean, it just the little details that you see, even like what you're saying there, the rings that also have that visual similarity to brass knuckles. It speaks volumes, and it's a nice detail to sort of enhance the performance and make you feel more like the character. I like the theory that she's more of the puppet master, the true Sauron pulling the strings here.
Sure.
But
I think she'd take that as a huge compliment.
oh, of course, the
But she
all-seeing
also
eye of
understood,
wardrobe.
she also understood time. That there's, particularly with Gil-Galad as one of the elder statesmen, um, his wardrobe is opulent, whether it's the runes on his cuff, but there's still something it has a patina to it. It's something that he's worn over time and that has worn. It has started to wear out. And particularly as the idea of the fading is introduced and the suggestion of experience is made manifest in a visual piece of clothing. I mean, you talk about an artist at the top of her game, and it was an honor. And that's true at every department. It's an honor to stand there and let them poke you in the ear with a gluey brush because they're creating magic.
Yeah, and that but that's also it's going to enhance the experience for folks that then go back and rewatch because then they can look for these
Yeah.
details. But I'm curious because when I was watching some of these behind the scenes making of features, one of the elf soldiers under Galadriel's command mentioned that his costume weighed about 20 kilograms and it was a really
Sure.
cool suit of armor. But, that in mind, did you have costume envy over anyone else's ensemble?
Well, mine didn't weigh that much, but it was heavy and it was corseted. Um, I think Rob Arameo has basically got a toga and a cloak. And I was envious of that every day. Because when I'm in full Gil-Galad, I can't really sit down,
Hmm.
not properly. Like, I can't lounge. There's no, if you sit down, that means everyone has to come over and readjust it and take it off and put it back on and get it back in place. And you've got this huge crown, and I'm already 6'3", so you kind of can't, you're unwieldy. And I just see Rob over in the corner in a deep crouch reading his iPad, and I was deeply envious of it.
So you
um
need something between like a chaise lounge and like the Hannibal Lecter thing they wheel him around in.
my one of the wardrobe department on this season, they call it a leaning table, because, for example, if you are in armor that weighs
Hmm.
20 kilos and you can't sit down, you can't move, they have this, it is a Hannibal Lecter, like a hand truck that they can kind of suspend you on with these pegs you put your arm over, and you can just kind of take the weight off your spine a little bit. My weight is not nearly, I mean, I have the weight of the fate of Middle Earth, which I feel is just really unwieldy. But yeah, my wardrobe isn't as bad as some. And also, I mean, you look at the orcs prosthetics, and so, I mean, I think all of that is practical. I really, for me to complain would be very ungilgalad.
Well, heavy is the head that wears the crown, so I think you
Well,
have a
sure, the
compelling argument for more
responsibility
comfort.
of a bunch of elves who just won't do what I tell them to.
Yes.
Yeah, that is frustrating.
Ergonomics, Eregion, it's right there linguistically. I think you can make a good case.
That's right.
But we're talking a bit about the sort of behind the scenes features here, the production design on this show. It's so, we were talking about even the costuming, but just seeing all the sets, all of these amazing locations they brought to life. Do you have a favorite detail or aspect of the production that others might have missed because you were there firsthand?
Um, that's a hard question to answer, because I know that the show is so dense. There are things that are in the first season that won't come to fruition fully until the last season. Things that, aspects of it, minor little visual cues that, when they materialize later, you go, oh! Um, so I don't want to ruin anything for anyone, but I do think the level of detail is, it's gobsmacking. And also, selfishly, with the design, so much of it is practical. We're not standing in a big green box. Particularly Numenor, they built that world, and from the size of a clam that they're eating, that's the size it would be. I mean, they are a hardy species, and the prehistoric nature of what lives in the ocean that supports their civilization is remarkable. And every little detail like that, it really matters. Um, and you know, there's so many things I want to talk about, Dan, and but it's not one of those shows that you're going to go, okay, I saw that. What's next?
Hmm.
There are things that you can rewatch and see something different every time, and that's because of the detail of the production design and some of the performances, and it's really good.
Of course. And I mean, that's something that we love doing here is sort of watching and rewatching and overanalyzing, overthinking. In that same sort of vein, can you confirm
But
if
I
the
think you're doing yourself,
spear?
it's not over analyzing. Like, you're just analyzing about something you care about. that like I don't like. Please don't. That's a
Oh
good
no,
thing.
no. I say this in the spirit of self-deprecation. Not, I think we're doing a perfectly reasonable level of analysis, especially based on just the conversations we'd have around the workplace anyway. But in that vein, can you confirm if the spear that Gil-Galad's holding in the finale is Aeglos, the same spear that he uses in the last alliance of elves and men against a certain Sauron I could name?
Would he carry any other spear?
I mean, look, he might have a work spear. He might have an evening spear. He's a
Right.
king.
This is
I don't
my
know. I don't
perfect
know what his collection looks
spear.
like.
No, no, no. That is Iaglos. Yeah,
Amazing.
my
That's
old
very
friend.
cool.
And yeah, as you know, uh, she gets sharpened up and gets some good play.
Yes, I'm eager to see. I'd love to see you put that spear to good use. Hopefully, in season two, we'll see. But sort of going back to that, talking about sort of the props and costume design and all that. Did you take home any souvenirs from set, perchance? I mean, it's okay if you did. I talked to the folks at Prime Video. They said it's totally fine. No one's going to snitch. This is just a private conversation.
They are lying to you, Dan. That's a, that sounds exactly like what they'd say. All of a
Yeah,
sudden,
on second thought, it does kind of sound like a honeypot,
screen
so I
starts
apologize.
to freeze. Um, no, I'm playing the long game because I feel like there are a few props that I want to really earn. Like
Hmm.
as the seasons go on, I want them to say, you know what, you were so great, and we're so happy with your work that here's a Aglos to take and
Yeah.
put under your bed at home. That kind of thing. I don't want to burn my bridges too soon. I'll burn my bridges later.
Exactly. That's what the season finale is for. But no, I think playing the long game is definitely smart here, fitting with the character, especially someone who has this much longer lifespan than the rest of us. And I'm curious, when you were approaching this character, how deep did you research Gil-Galad's ancestry, and when did you stop because of how weird and confusing it gets with all of the various revisions and strange family tree limbs?
Yeah, it gets a little labyrinthian there. But I like that. I like that Tolkien was constantly revisiting storylines in his mind and re-examining characters and what their lineage would mean to their future and their trajectory in his universe. But I do think that I didn't find it frustrating. I found it indicative that there is something nebulous and mysterious about Gil-Galad. And I think it's unique that a good portion of the first age, he was an observer because he was so young and he was under the care of Círdan, and that he was, he became very much a part of it, but that he was in the periphery for so much that he kind of materializes kind of from nowhere. And I think that's a good thing um, because he can exist in the ether. I think the best leaders that we have today are the ones that we kind of know the least about. We just know how good they are at their job. We know what they've done for us and what they're planning on doing for our future. We start to get into the nitty gritty of who came from where and who's friends with who, we kind of lose a bit of what's unique about what's happening now. So I just kind of took that as a private cue from Tolkien that he can exist in the ether in a very healthy way.
Hmm.
I mean, of course, there's one family tree, and he and Galadriel are married. So, I mean, they're not married, but they're related, they're cousins.
Yes.
It's if they're married, that's a whole different story.
Yeah,
Um,
huge season two spoiler.
yeah, but they're related, and so once you start getting into the weeds of that, you'd really have to talk to the man himself to really get to
Hmm.
the source. So use what you do have, which is a confusing backstory, and
Yeah.
see how that informs uh, your character's future.
Well, I really like that sort of takeaway of him being someone who has to rise to the occasion. And, there are all of these proud lineages in Middle Earth, and we get to see a lot of these lineages unfold and how those folks deal with these changing circumstances. But I'm curious as well with, we talked a bit about the fading and sort of how Gil-Galad has the weight of the elven people on his shoulders. How did him being the last of the Noldor kings affect your approach to this character?
Well, it's another clue that Tolkien has given you. He's the longest reigning High King of the Noldor and the last. What makes him successful over that period of time? He also reigned over the longest period of peace in Middle Earth. That the idea that that happens without a cost is naive. I think that it's another. For example, he never marries. He never takes a wife. He never has a relationship. He is he's married to the job, man. And the kind of sorrow that comes with that, and the like you said, the weight of that. And it's not just the weight of the elven kind. It's the weight of these are the elves that chose to stay in Middle Earth. I think he, in not even in an abstract way, in a very practical way, feels the weight of all Middle Earth. In the event of the elves leave, within the vacuum floods evil, and I think he knows that. I think peacetime for Gil-Galad is a very unsettling time. While everyone else is at the party downstairs, Gil-Galad is in bed staring at the ceiling. That's how he chooses to live, and that's one of the things I really admire about him.
Yeah, I mean, it's also who knows if he even has the brain space to devote to something other than keeping all of these various plates spinning.
Sure,
But
yeah.
but also
I
in
don't
his
have time to date.
exactly, but also
Yeah.
in his defense, putting a ring on in Middle Earth has a very different meaning than in most other contexts. So I think that,
Eh,
yeah, there we go.
very good. Very good.
Now we talked a bit about sort of the fandom around this show, and part of the fun of watching a show like The Rings of Power, especially for me, one that explores a time period that many folks might not know about, is that joy of discovery and trying to find clues and draw parallels and seek out different theories. And sort of this was a wellspring of some genuinely wild fan theories that were fun to see which ones played out, which
What did you
ones
hear? What
did
was the
not work
wildest
out
one
so
you heard?
well. The wildest one that for me is one that our editor in chief, Amy Ratcliffe, sort of proposed. And that is, a lot of us are led to believe the stranger is a certain gray and then later white wizard bears some similarities to Gandalf, but she thinks he might actually be a secret Saruman. And I'm like, okay, I'm willing to venture down this primrose path with you. I'm always keeping an open mind as a purveyor of strange theories myself sometimes. But I like that. I like the theories about the sort of the cultists in white. But I'm curious,
Mhm.
did you have a favorite fan theory that you saw spring up over the course of the season?
I mean, what I enjoyed the most was seeing people vacillate between who they thought was going to be revealed as Sauron, and
Hmm.
uh, that was my favorite part. Just there was one time where I had a friend be like, "Is the big twist that it's you?" And I was like, "You need to, you really. I'm going to give you some books." But I mean, but I
No,
get it. There's something. Especially initially when you're introduced to Gil-Galad, there's something overbearing and potentially sinister about him. And uh, no, I mean, I think that's all good. Like, I would never categorize it as weird. I mean, this is great. But that's what you want. You want people to talk about it and discuss and argue and be upset. Indifference is the death of anything that you create. You don't want people to come watch your show and then go, "Okay, where are we getting pizza?" That's not interesting.
yeah, no, you want the pizza so you can sit down and then watch the show while you eat. But
Yeah,
yeah, no, I agree. I
you
think
you
that
can't
for
be torn
me,
away, so you order delivery. Yes, obviously.
exactly. And then your mouth is full so you don't talk during the episode.
Yeah, hush.
Save it for after.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's always the fun part of fandom for me, being the extension of the imagined worlds that we choose to spend time in, and then find a community there, and then chatting about the things we love and sharing those passions. And we've definitely seen a lot of that when we've been talking about Rings of Power with our audience at home. So it's been really refreshing
Oh,
and
that's great.
invigorating.
That's the. I mean, selfishly, that's the one thing I want it to do. Like that to me, you paid me for my part in it, for what it is. That's a huge compliment, whether you know it or not, because that's the point. I mean, it is a fellowship. I mean, to not sound overly dramatic, but it is. And whether it was at Comic-Con or the crew that are just as familiar with the source material as you are, it does feel like this ragtag band of ruffians that all love the same thing and want to make it the best possible version that it can be. And that's another, it sounds really uh, on the nose, but that's another reason why I enjoyed watching the making of stuff, because
Mhm.
then you get to see the number of stunt guys that it took to do a wire gag to throw Ismail through the air. The number of people it took to keep the acorns in the right spot on Nori's head, like that. It takes a passion and a devotion that I don't know. I like to think that any other writer other than Tolkien just probably wouldn't inspire.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe
it's
Star
such
Wars.
a yeah, but like with any of these, any storyteller that creates such a richly populated world full of dense mythologies, that's something that is always a joy to see explored and treated with the reverence that you as a fan would want to see them treated with. And that's why it was cool to watch these behind the scenes videos to see, oh wow, here's everything that went into accomplishing this specific sequence, which looks really cool when it's done, but it's also really neat to know the component parts. And I think, especially in fandom, that level of granularity is something that many of us crave.
Oh, cool.
But sort of talking, we're talking about behind the scenes, but looking towards the future. I know you folks are filming season 2 now. Is there anything you can tease about season 2, or is there an aspect of your character you're looking forward to exploring further?
Um, well, I've got a long way to go. I can say that JD and Patrick really hit the ground running with season 2. I mean, reading the episodes, you just go, okay, wow. Like they're not wasting any time to get into the aspects of Tolkien that we love and are looking forward to. Um, that's about all I can say about that. I definitely think that the duality of Gil-Galad between peacemaker and kind of wartime general, we start to really do away with one aspect of that.
I guess we'll find out which aspect they're doing away with, but
That's
hopefully
right.
it's not the
It's
peacetime part.
50-50.
Yeah, well, who can say what's going to happen? Well, I'm super excited. I can't wait to see more. But in the meantime, people out there, they can go back into the world of the Rings of Power season 1, see how it all came together through the brand new X-ray features over on Prime Video. Benjamin, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Dan, this has been an absolute pleasure. I love talking about Tolkien. I love talking about Tolkien to people that also love it.
Well, we love talking about with people who are part of it, who also share that same passion. So thank you again. And to everyone out there at home, what do you think? What's your favorite behind the scenes moment from season 1? What was your favorite aspect of the Rings of Power season 1? Let us know in the comments below. And for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, make sure you stay tuned to Nerdist.com. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.